Hokage I'll become stronger when I'm fishing. Chapter 201-220. Chapter 201. The Charlotte family, that's all. The giant jeers behind him took this opportunity to rush up, clenching his huge fist and smashing it down. A bang, a huge hole was formed in the ground. At this time, it was blocked by the devil, and this move can be regarded as taking the opportunity to drag the devil. Tabret clenched his bat and hit the giant in front of him, but was cut off by Fujitora. Only one knife, it can be easily killed in seconds. Daifuku was always in a state of surprise, and now the sugar behind him ran forward. Just when his hand was about to touch the big one, the sugar-coated cannonball interrupted the sugar. Fujitora, who was in the back, had already taken advantage of this gap to come into contact with Daifuku in front. Gravity slash. Hot fist. Slash came into contact with the fist, causing a strong explosion due to gravity, and everything around was in a state of full gravity. Daifuku took this opportunity to step back, but it seemed to be unsuccessful. The sword energy in front of him is. Fujitora shot, and when the knife went down, a purple ray of light was emitted from his body, and then blood spurted out, and Daifuku slowly fell to the ground. As if being completely defeated by this move, Perospero below panicked. I plan to cover Daifuku and take this opportunity to rescue him. Gels seemed to have felt that the huge impact force was gradually shrinking, and the demon underneath seemed to have lost his strength. This opportunity, he aimed at Perospero in the sky and knocked it down with a punch. Is the sugar ready? Of course. Then, sugar jumped into Gels's hand. Owen rushed forward. Aiming at Fujitora, punched him, but was turned into a toy man by the inexplicably flying sugar. Gravity space. Meteorite. Fujitora raised his arm high, and at this moment, the surrounding earth trembled violently. The shock even made it difficult for Gertz to stand still behind him. Looking up, a dozen huge meteorites in the sky are rapidly falling towards the bottom. Candy. Huge cannonball. Owen was turned into a toy man, now. It is a powerful force, but it is difficult to exert. Sugar's inexplicable arrival made him feel quite uncomfortable, but after he turned into a toy man, he took control in a strange way. Perospero plans to use the power of his candy to hit the meteorite in the sky. This is obviously hitting a stone with an egg, which has no effect on this book. At the moment when the giant candy touched the meteorite, the friction and the heat formed were enough to melt it. Meteorite fell mercilessly and landed on the ground, causing the entire cake island to tremble. Perospero, Owen, Daifuku and Tabret, all four were defeated. Even if a huge meteorite hits it, it may not kill them, but it can make them lose their ability to fight. It's just one trick, and it completely hits it hard. Cracker fell to the ground, and now the effect of gravity gradually disappeared, but the severe pain from his body also made it difficult for him to move. The Charlotte family, but that's it. Fujitora held his sword and stood in front of them. Now that Gertz's axe is broken, he can only find new ones to use as weapons. At that time, he took it lightly and did not use his armed arrogance to protect him. Without the weapons in hand, how can we fight in the next battle? I don't need your help, Helding and the others will settle it. I hope so. Helding sneezed, he seemed to feel it. Gels testified to himself mocking behind him. It's getting cold. He smiled helplessly and shook his head. He didn't know how long it would last for the 8 Gates Dunjia formation. Why do you still want to continue? Of course, if I didn't kill you, I wouldn't feel at ease saying anything. Huh. With a sound, it disappeared in front of Smoothie. The domineering look of Smoothie who suddenly appeared behind him had long been expected. And killed a few pirates behind, but did not hit Hierding. He found that Hierding was now crouching on the ground to avoid his sword chi, and kicked him directly with one kick. Lord Smoothie. The pirates behind were so frightened that they wanted to escape but didn't dare. They could only stand on the spot and be beheaded, but it was really inappropriate, and now they don't know what to do. Don't be noisy. He slowly got up, stared at Helding in front of him, and frowned. The sharp murderous aura emanating from his eyes is truly chilling. He also participated in many battles. Even among the four emperors, there would inevitably be internal wars. When he was fighting Kaido, he also fought against the three calamities. At that time, he was not in the same situation as he is now. That can kill Kaido of the beasts has completely attracted his attention now. Looks like I've dealt with you really well. You know, maybe water is my weakness. But when I get serious, there will be infinite water in my body. I'm also no longer dehydrated. This is the product of giganticization. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 202. You are very strong, but unfortunately you met me. After speaking, Smoothie slowly closed his eyes. When he opened it again, Smoothie was enveloped in bright purple light. And at this moment, he seemed to be filled with enormous power, and his body was completely gigantic. It was even taller than the size of a giant clan. Let you see my strongest slash, the water sword. Master Smoothie's strongest move. It is said that a slash that can split the sea in two, which idiot will surely die here today. The little pirates shouted excitedly. Originally feeling that there was no chance for this battle, they rekindled hope. You should have done this long ago. Higher Hall frowned, and his whole body was wrapped in armed domineering. And himself, he is also ready to use the strongest defensive ability to block. Come on. A heavy slash. The powerful sword energy would even devour the entire half of the island. By the impact force charged forward at the speed of sound. Wherever it went, a long crack was left behind. The Day Tiger breaks 5, fist fight. Helding clasped his hands together, and then clenched his fists. Like an explosive air wave, it was ready to go, and it randomly attacked a huge tiger, which was mixed with wind pressure. And this strong wind pressure is enough to completely distort the surrounding space, and you can even see the distortion in the surrounding air with the naked eye. Suddenly, the sword chi collided, forming a violent explosion with a loud sound. The pirates behind were bleeding from their 7 orifices and fell to the ground one after another. If you don't have a little concentration, your internal organs will be completely shattered. Seeing this huge fierce tiger take the powerful slash in its mouth, the 2 sword chi are still in front, and the game of confrontation has never been up and down. The 2 cried out. Drink! Drink! The 2 shouted hard, and both sides were in a state of red and green. And now, Hierding frowned, and the movement in his eyes was moved. The last resort, no matter what. Finally, at the last moment, everything was completely crushed. The strong wind pressure swept this area, and the little pirates carried on their backs. This huge wind pressure was brought into the air, and it was like a doll at the mercy of it. Finally, at the last moment, the tiger swallowed the sword energy and rushed forward. Just at that moment, wind pressure penetrated Smoothie's body. Smoothie was completely unconscious, and the long sword in his hand fell to the ground. As he fell unconscious on the ground, his whole body was covered with blood, and the capillaries on his body seemed to have been shattered, but his internal organs were intact. But the strong wind pressure brought him a huge impact, which already made him feel extremely painful. A bang, it fell to the ground and lost its gigantic power. The wind pressure brought by the tiger also disappeared into the air. The surroundings were unusually calm, even terrifyingly silent. The breeze swept across Helding's face, and Helding slowly walked in front of Smoothie. He has no strength to stand up now. You are indeed very strong, but unfortunately you have met a stronger me. Smoothie coughed and vomited blood on the ground. He was severely injured and lay unconscious on the ground. Helding quietly left. In the sky, the light rain soaked the whole cake. It's just that the raging fire above has never subsided. Helding raised his head melancholy, looked at the gloomy sky, did not speak, and fell to the ground. Who gave off a humble aura, exhaled slowly. Is this the end? Smoothie opened his mouth slowly, then fainted. And Helding also used up the last of his strength and fell to the ground. He closed his eyes in relief, and this move also cost him a lot of strength. Must rest well and get enough sleep to replenish. The internal injuries on his body made him extremely painful, and there was nothing he could do about the pain. Led the others to Helding's side. Seeing that she did not speak when she fell to the ground, several people helped her up and planned to help him back to the boat. The battle so far is over. Half of the Charlotte family's children are dead and wounded. The battle should be over. It's hard to say. Shiryu of the Rain hasn't come yet. A huge fistful of thorns, surrounded by armed arrogants, shot towards Shiryu of the Rain at a high speed. Shiryu of the Rain held the famous sword in his hand, and poured all the power in himself into the great sword in his hand. The powerful tremor even made it impossible for him to grasp his weapon. And that giant trident, Shiryu of the Rain also felt very helpless. Now he had no choice but to unload and do an emergency dodge, but the blade stabbed into her shoulder. Fortunately, his speed is fast enough, otherwise this move will directly hit his chest. And just at this moment, a huge impact force penetrated his body. He was completely taken away and fell to the ground with a thud. Chapter 204, All or Nothing, 2 Killer Moves. After 3 minutes, the sound of thunder gradually disappeared, and the man slowly walked out of the sound of thunder. Staggered and nearly fell, but he still hadn't fallen. Was only when he looked intently, that after the blue light disappeared, the figure slowly walked towards Shiryu of the Rain. The smoke on his body hadn't dissipated, and this move just hit him. You are the first to be struck by lightning and still be able to walk out. But now, I really can't show mercy to you. That's what I want. Katakuri dragged his heavy body, and even if he was fighting for his life now, he had to defeat the opponent in front of him. At this moment, Katakuri jumped up and clenched his fists, as if firing a machine gun. The usual fists hit Shiryu of the Rain. Shiryu of the Rain clenched his famous sword tightly and resisted it hard, but he could only avoid any harm as much as possible. The powerful impact made Shiryu of the Rain retreat one after another. But Katakuri, this guy, is still madly attacking himself. He even has some doubts now, whether the move just now really hit. Why was Katakuri still able to carry out such a violent attack after receiving such a strong blow? No wonder he was called a perfect man. This man who was born without a back did make him a little impressed. Katakuri. I remember you. Shiryu of the Rain fell to the ground after being hit several times in a row, and the severe pain on his body made him very awake. At this moment, he couldn't give his opponent any chance to breathe at all. He got up and rushed forward, the handle of the knife smashed forward. And the powerful impact formed by the huge fist even squeezed Shiryu of the Rain to the ground. The wind pressure is too strong. The peerless donuts. The ground was topped by donuts 5, 3 or 434, with huge donuts formed of glutinous rice, surrounding Shiryu of Rain. The rice cake thrusts coming from all directions made Shiryu of Rain quite hard to resist. Even if the door is opened. Dunjaji, Shiryu of Rain's body function can be greatly improved. But in the face of such a density of attacks, he still felt a little tricky. Even with the use of armament-colored domineering, it is possible to resist Katakuri. It is quite laborious to cut off the rice cake. After all, this thing eats soft and not hard, it will not cause any trauma on it, and it can absorb its own strength. Thunder and rain. The thunder in the sky provokes the raindrops in the air. The powerful sword chi squeezes the raindrops, forming a high-pressure and high-density water wave sword chi. The moment the sword energy swept across the rice cake was cut into 2 pieces and fell to the ground, completely diluted to form a terrain similar to a swamp. Shiryu of the Rain can only use sword energy to break through, and he needs to move forward slowly. But Katakuri is not a steak, and won't stand there waiting for him to attack. Rainy glutinous rice. There were huge pillars formed by countless glutinous rice protruding from the bottom. These pillars were like cages connected together, and they were slowly and rapidly hitting Shiryu of the Rain. Countless pillars were desperately pounding the ground, and there was not a single intact place on the entire ground, full of scars. Pillar made him feel a little outrageous, but Shiryu of the Rain had no intention of avoiding it at all. The domineering armament surrounded by him is enough to help Shiryu of Rain withstand these injuries. Now all he needs to do is to charge forward quickly. Under the sword energy, more than a dozen currents of water slashed towards the front. The domineering rice cake of armed color formed a huge barrier, and when it touched the black and purple lightning emitted when it splashed, it tore the sky apart. Shiryu of the Rain took this opportunity to detour backwards, jumped up, slashed down and was killed by Katakuri. Now the whole cake island is filled with domineering, and the black lightning that radiates out is everywhere. It's really fighting. I even think you're stronger than Drought Jack, and you can rival him. He may not be my opponent. Two disappeared in an instant, and all they could see was in the sky, the sparks emitted by the collision of the two rays of light burst out everywhere. Portrait could not be seen clearly, but at this moment, Katakuri stood on the ground, aimed at Shiryu of the Rain in the sky, and fired his fist like a machine gun. How can you hide in the air? Royal Rain Stream. Waving the famous sword in his hand, the sword energy cut off the raindrops, squeezing the raindrops like a water blanket. Shiryu of the Rain stepped on the water blanket in the sky to avoid this move. Next, this is the last resort. A winner and loser between you and me. Looking at Shiryu of the Rain standing opposite him, Katakuri angrily said the last sentence. I thought so too, now you and I must have one lying here. I really hope to be a friend with you, if there is a chance in the future. Katakuri said. Silence. The explosive sandbar formed after the fruit's ability is awakened. It was also Katakuri's last move to face Shiryu of the Rain by betting all his strength. Chapter 205. The Scale of Victory. Katakuri is defeated. Katakuri knew very well that his body might not be able to support it for long. Therefore, the only way to end the battle as soon as possible is to defeat Shiryu of the Rain quickly. Famous Sword. Thunderstorm Slash. As a samurai, Shiryu of Rain also knew very well why Katakuri used this move. When two samurai finally decide the life and death of each other, they usually use the sword drawing technique to carry out the final battle to the death. Usually, only those who make moves without hesitation can decide the outcome of the battle. In Katakuri's eyes, Shiryu of the Rain could clearly see that there was no distraction in his eyes, and he was even quite firm. That case, it depends on which of the two sides is more powerful now. From the countless donuts, the horns are stretched out, the giant arms strengthened by waxy, hitting Katakuri in multiple directions. Such a powerful explosive force, fast and accurate, hardly leaves any chance of evasion for Shi of the Rain. After all, this move can be said to have no dead ends, but Shiryu of the Rain doesn't plan to avoid it now. Since you are my opponent, now is the time to decide the outcome. Of the Rain clenched the famous sword in his hand and made a desperate move forward. Even when his fist hit him in the face, he didn't flinch at all. After all, Shiryu of the Rain has only one target, and that is Katakuri in front. Come on, rush towards me, even if it falls into your hands, I'm willing to do so. Now. Shiryu of the Rain could see a little hesitation in Katakuri's eyes. That was the moment when the sword was fired. A chilling light penetrated his body. Katakuri stood where he was. Then Shiryu of Sword, Light, Sword, Shadow and Rain was already standing behind him. At this moment, blood spurted out from Katakuri's shoulders. Shiryu of the Rain deliberately avoided the key point. Katakuri showed a relieved expression. Slowly fell to the ground, making a loud thud, and just falling down left a strong vibration. Shiryu of the Rain took a long breath and slowly picked up the cigar that had fallen on the ground. It was completely wet from the rain, and in desperation, he took out another one from his pocket, lit the cigar and looked back at the Katakuri lying on the ground. I had a great time in this fight. Katakuri fell to the ground, looked at Rainy who was standing beside him, and smiled. At this moment, Shiryu of the Rain also fell to his side and nodded slightly. Me too. Shiryu of Rain closed his eyes, and now he is full of scars. The strength of Katakuri's fist is too great, even if Shiryu of the Rain carries it to the end. I am afraid that this injury will take some time to recover. After all, it is an internal injury. War gradually subsided, and finally the raging fire here lost to the slight drizzle in the sky. Except for the sound of drizzle dripping on the ground, nothing could stop them both. It was now that Shiryu of the Rain suddenly opened his eyes. Sorry, I can't be here with you. I won this battle, but I have to go to my comrade. After he finished speaking, he picked up the coat on the ground and put it on his body, and left with a cigar in his mouth. Top of the island, Yagami Soto's whole body was covered with a lacquer black aura. Is probably completely different now than he was before. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I believe that you should be able to expect to lose, and it's definitely you. The last breath of air below the island disappeared, and the sound completely dissipated. I am afraid that Charlotte Lingling had expected that Katakuri had been defeated. Because it is difficult for him to feel the breath of Katakuri now, at the very beginning, the murderous aura of Katakuri almost permeated the entire island. But now, everything has vanished into nothingness. I think you understand it now. Only you are here, lingering on. Do you know what a real king is like? Under the shock from the soul, Charlotte Lingling's body from the inside out, the domineering and murderous aura that she exudes leaked everywhere. But for Yagami Kangdu, it's of no use at all. Is it up to you? Yagami Kangdu sneered. Charlotte Lingling stared at Yagami Kangdu with wide eyes in disbelief. He couldn't believe it, that there could be someone who was not afraid of the shock of his own soul. You're not afraid of being shocked by my soul. This is the inherent ability of the soul fruit, and Charlotte Lingling, who is a devil fruit ability person, can use her own abilities more freely. Even, it can contain the fruit ability in the domineering inside, and explode at the same time. But he was a little surprised, this Yashin Kangdu, who was just a little boy to himself, could have such a spirit. I'm the man who wants to become a king in the future, how can I be afraid of your mere 4 emperors? Yagami Kangdu raised his head and stared at the old woman, his eyes showed a trace of disdain. Exuded from him was even more violent, and could even cause substantial damage. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 206, Lost. Charlotte Lingling's shock. Ground cracked, and even began to gradually collapse, and the surrounding rocks exploded slightly. Charlotte Lingling sneered and opened her hands. Prometheus flew over instantly and put it on his hand. Charlotte Lingling's arm was wrapped in flames, and she slammed a powerful flame vortex, which spewed out in the direction of Yagami Kangdu. The huge flame vortex formed was like a whip, slapping Yagami Kangdu's body with all his might. And Yagami Kangdu avoided the flames as much as possible, and every time he slapped on the ground, the raging fire would ignite to form a huge flame track. After a while, the raging fire ignited by the trajectory on the ground completely surrounded Yagami Kangdu. Charlotte Lingling looked at Yagami Kangdu sneeringly. I thought you had the courage to fight, and you can only be trampled under your feet by me. Zeus, what are you doing? Zeus flew in panic, and then the dark clouds spread. In the sky has been surrounded by flames. With Yagami Kangdu as the center, the entire island was chopped off in a split second. The boulder rolled towards the bottom of the island, Charlotte Lingling sneered and frowned. The flying carpet holds her up, so she can move very freely in the air. Again, I found that there was no figure of Yagami Kanto in the center. Looking up suddenly, I realized that Yagami Kangdu was able to walk freely in the air without relying on the ability of the devil fruit. Therefore, he was not afraid of the powerful flame. Emperor Sword Emperor Slash. Even in this cloudy and rainy sky, the sword energy violently rubs against the air, and it can still form a strong flame. The flame gap shot forward for a moment, tearing the surrounding air. No blade, blade heart. Yagami Kangdu simply waved his hand, and the fierce sword energy formed was still able to rub in the air, emitting flames. By the two flames ripped apart everything in the air. The resonance formed by the tremors that the birds in the sky couldn't hold back was tearing apart all the creatures in the sky. Little devil, it's too early for you to have a reputation as a sea emperor. Of me so easily after defeating Kaido. Charlotte Lingling sneered, and rushed towards Yagami Kangdu with a rapid speed. He clenched the sword in his hand and went down. The sword energy ripped apart Yagami Kangdu's body. At that moment, blood spurted out, and at this moment, Charlotte Lingling laughed loudly at Yagami Kangta. In the end, it's just a kid. Now I'm still wondering why I think of a guy like Kaido, and it's impossible to defeat a kid like you. It's because he's too negligent, but you're too weak. Charlotte Lingling, who was floating in the air, laughed and was about to slowly descend back to regroup when she heard a mocking voice standing among the ruins of the island. I don't know either, maybe it's because I'm too strong. The sound of a sudden sound shocked him. He clearly cut off his body just now, and even cut it in half, but why now? Yagami Kangdu didn't speak, his hand didn't move at all, and he didn't need a seal. Countless huge fireballs floated in the sky, shooting away in the direction of Charlotte Lingling. Charlotte Lingling turned around abruptly, only to find that the fireball was about to approach her. Now she has to abandon the flying carpet under her feet and jump to the ground. The moment the fireball touched, the flying carpet was instantly destroyed. And just when he landed, he realized that this was a trap of Yagami Kangdu. Water Escape Water Dragon Ball Technique. The giant water dragon formed by the rushing water of Yagami Kangdu stared fiercely at Charlotte Lingling at the front. Charlotte Lingling raised the great sword in her hand and aimed at the position ahead. Staring at the fire dragon spewing towards him, this turbulent force is unstoppable. And at this moment, Charlotte Lingling slashed the water dragon with one knife. A puddle of water fell on the ground. Only now did he realize that the water droplets stuck on the long sword in his hand couldn't get rid of it no matter how much he swung it. The technique of escaping the water prison by water. Sure enough, the water droplets on it were found spreading everywhere. Is raining in the sky itself, so moisture is definitely the most useful at this time. Moisture is endless and used too quickly. The water around the water droplets condensed and formed a huge water ball, which surrounded Charlotte Lingling's whole body. Slowly squeezed, Charlotte Lingling roared angrily, and the huge murderous aura even broke the huge water flow directly. The beach sprinkled on the ground like a waterfall. Damn, what happened to He Fengsheng just now? Charlotte Lingling is now entangled in the matter of the knife just now. Obviously she has cut off her body, even that feeling is very real and why he is still there now. Chapter 207. Crisis, eating disorder breaks out. It's just a substitute. The battle is not over yet. Lei Dun Reiki. Right now, the huge thunderous thunder summoned by Zeus in the sky just hit the Yagami Kangdu. Lei's speed, how can a kid like you expect it? Charlotte Lingling snorted coldly, stood where she was, and laughed again. Recklessly, and the scene ahead made his smile congeal on his face. There was a black figure in front of him, standing in the middle of the thunderbolt. The strange power cut off the thunderbolt, and even absorbed it completely and rushed in front of him at an absolute speed. Stepping forward was a thrust. Fortunately, her speed was too fast, and the lightning cut his skin. Like a long trace, the blood began to flow, spurting everywhere. Charlotte Lingling stepped back on purpose. The Soul Fruit's ability was able to heal relatively minor wounds on her body in a short period of time. But the pain is real, which makes Charlotte Lingling quite angry. Those who made him feel the pain have already been killed by himself. This man actually made himself feel pain, and today no matter what the situation is, he must be killed. At the same time, because of the long-term battle, he has not eaten sweets for a long time. There was too much stomach acid in the body, and the excessive desire for food took over his sanity. Therefore, it has completely exploded, and with this pain, His brain has lost a little sanity. As eating disorder exploding. Yagami Kangdu stood where he was, and at first mocked the guy who didn't have the rules of battle, but now he really doesn't have the skills to master the battle. I want food. Then kill you. The art of fire escape and fireball. A huge fireball surged towards Charlotte. Touch Charlotte Lingling, she was directly cut off by Charlotte's knife. The huge fireball burst in an instant, and Tai Lingling was still running towards Yagami Kangdu. Yagami Kangdu did not understand until now. He is no longer sensible and now the fists of the two are on one. The domineering arrogance that came out ripped apart the earth. The entire island was divided into two, and with just one move, the sea water spewed out from the cracks, and the huge waves formed hit the boulders and shattered the boulders. None of the sea kings escaped this crisis, and none of the creatures within the crack were spared. The power of the two of them was too powerful, and in the end, a strong explosion occurred between them, and the powerful impact bounced back both of them, and it was the power of the current Samsara Eye that erupted. Vientiane Heaven. Charlotte Lingling's huge body was attracted by the mysterious attraction, directly sucked to Yagami Soto's side. With this inexplicable attraction, Yagami Kangdu clenched his fists and aimed at Charlotte Lingling's lower abdomen. Going forward is a punch, which directly penetrated her body, but this punch did not cause him too much trauma. It seems that he really lost his mind, and I am afraid that he may not be able to feel the pain. Touching his chin, looking at Charlotte Lingling who was lying on the ground, Yagami Kanto stood up. At this moment, Charlotte Lingling is afraid that there is only Yagami Kangdu in front of her eyes, and the only goal in his eyes should be to kill Yagami Kangdu. The fire escapes the fire and extinguishes it. A raging fire engulfed the peak of the island. Originally, it was just a ninjutsu, but it was used by Yagami Kanto in a high-level battle. Raging fire engulfed Charlotte Lingling, completely burying it in it. Zeus on the top, the rapid rainfall, as much as possible to reduce the burning fire underground. Could do it himself, the shocking aura emanating from his body extinguished all the flames. How can this be done? Some of the pirates below seem to have not been defeated yet. Looking at the evil aura emanating from the top of the Cake Island, one could guess that Charlotte Lingling's eating disorder must have erupted. The last time the disease broke out, the entire island was almost destroyed. If he hadn't given the food he wanted in time, everyone on the island might not have been able to leave alive. Therefore, Charlotte Lingling is not only a captain, but on this island, he is not only a king but also a time bomb. Because no one can guarantee when his symptoms will break out, all the residents on the island are afraid of this happening, but they are powerless. Because no matter in terms of strength or appetite, they have no way to satisfy Charlotte Lingling. I am afraid that only the sons of the Charlotte family can come up with a solution. It's kind of interesting, it seems that this battle is more fun. Yagami Kangdu stood there quite excited. This was the second Sea Emperor. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 209, Hellflame vs Amaterasu Black Flame. The powerful tremor even prevented the lower part of the Cake Island from participating in the war too much, and the little pirates with no combat experience could not bear such excessive wind pressure. Their internal organs were squeezed and completely crushed, and their personal appearance was still quite perfect, but the inside was hollowed out long ago, and their 7 orifices bleed and fell to the ground. Hey, what are you joking about? The island hasn't been damaged. With Devil Fruit ability use the barrier of candy to protect the little pirates inside, and they were spared. But just one move made them feel that this battle was really not something they could participate in. I'm afraid, in the next life, I may not be able to do this to such an extent. Captain, what should we do now? The world over there is very dangerous, how can we bear it? This powerful air current has even spread to other crew members. Did it come from the captain's side? Gertz frowned and looked towards the top of the island. Fujitora just closed his eyes and could feel it with his 6th sense. This power is definitely incomparably powerful. Each of them has their own powerful strength and aura, so even in the face of such a high amount of damage, there is absolutely no way for the aftershocks to hurt themselves. But just this time, it made them feel that the captain is definitely not an ordinary person. I am really curious about the power of the head of the regiment, and I want to try it with him. Forget it, I'm afraid you will be killed in seconds. Gals turned his head and glanced at Fujitora. Indeed, such a huge air current spread rapidly with the two of them at the center. Even the surrounding boulders, steel, buildings and trees have been completely crushed. The send-off area that flew through the sky was also affected, and there were no bones left, just one move. After one move, the entire Cake Island was filled with blood, and there was blood left by other people. After being squeezed by the air, a blood mist was completely formed, and the entire island became a blood mist. It's been a while, I am really young, but today I have to chew you up. Hellfire. Prometheus was hidden in Zeus's body, and when Charlotte Lingling called, it shot out of Zeus's body. At that moment, his whole body radiated 1,000 radians. The high temperature has melted the surrounding rocks and has completely sucked up the water in the uppermost layer of the sea. The Cake Island has a radius of 5 miles, and the water vapor slowly floats down. The sponge is precisely because of these water vapor, the sky becomes darker. However, the high-temperature flames were now fired from Prometheus's body, and the places where it shone like a radiant light were completely scorched. Just like the flame of Amaterasu, if the object is not strong enough to burn completely, it will never stop. The art of water escaped great flow. Doped sky and the moisture in the air gradually spread. The eighth god's Kangdu burst out his chakra, turning the surrounding blood fog into a sea of blood. Of the sea has turned scarlet. Suddenly, the big water that fell from the sky that could drown the Cake Island completely shrouded it, and even nearly swept away Prometheus. Under this high temperature, no matter how turbulent the sea is, there is no way to completely extinguish the fire on Prometheus. It's useless, although he is Muppet, he can also be called a quasi-god in terms of strength. You should be clear, you dare to call yourself an emperor just because you are an ordinary person. Hee, the fifth sea emperor is probably your own dream. Believe it or not, I destroy your artificial sun. Iori Kangdu frowned, and the cold light emanating from his eyes was already destined for that. It would not end well. The pupil of the left eye turned into a kaleidoscope shape, and then the black flame began to burn from it, and it could even burn on this sea of blood. Charlotte Lingling was stunned, he couldn't believe that this person could be real. How could there be a flame that could burn on the sea without oil on it? How is it possible that the black flame is really the first time I saw that guy's eyes? What's going on? It doesn't look like a fruit person. Charlotte Lingling thought to herself, and she always felt that she had a bad premonition. When he was about to take back Prometheus, he found that the speed of the black flame was too fast. Prometheus has been carried on the flame and surrounded by flames. But this black flame is probably more violent than the red flame of the ultra-high temperature box it emits. Prometheus in the sky let out a hysterical wailing, obviously he was tormented by this black flame. Ah, Lord Charlotte! Prometheus wailed loudly. And the black flame is about to swallow it up. Now his whole body is surrounded by black flames, and he wants to escape but has no way to start. It is even more impossible to resist now, and Prometheus has completely turned black. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 210, 5 thunders hit the top, and the complete body must be Susanang. At this moment, he gradually fell into the water, and now Yagami Kangdu also deliberately put away the flame. Now that he has severely damaged Prometheus, although the high temperature on his body will not be completely extinguished by the sea water, his strength must have been severely damaged. Even if he doesn't die, he definitely won't make him feel better. You seem weak. Yagami Kanto said sneeringly. Is true that Xiaopo Wu, Taiyang looks like a coward, although he will use some fierce performances to scare people, but his strength is nothing more than that. Forget it. It seems that I have to rely on my own strength to kill you. Charlotte Lingling raised her hand high and lifted the Emperor's sword over her head. Guided by the sound of thunder in the sky, the entire body of the yellow Emperor sword was completely filled with the sound of thunder. Just one knife, the thunder fell, and the surrounding rustling made a huge noise. In the largest area in front were instantly shattered. And with his powerful aura and soul shock, he injected that group of things into his soul one after another, and they turned into a fighting soldier killing machine with self-awareness. Kill this kid. At this moment, he gave an order, and the surrounding huge rocks inserted their arms into the ground one after another. Then he brought out a huge rock and threw it towards Yagami Kangdu in front of him. The rocks are violently rubbed in the air, and the resulting flames are like meteorites. Ninja Triple Rashomon. The huge gates attached to the ghosts and gods were arranged in 3 rows, blocking the huge rocks flying around, and even able to bounce the rocks back unscathed. The huge meteorite fell on the ground, and the powerful explosion it emitted shattered all the surrounding rocks. Those souls were also taken back by Charlotte Lingling. Hey, what are you kidding me? I can't fight with you again. Can you use some decent moves to deal with me? Fire escape, the art of fireball. When the fireball was sprayed, Badu in the back threw his hand, and the fireball instantly turned into several hundred rounds. And this huge fireball hit Charlotte Lingling, knowing her body, even when it exploded on Charlotte Lingling's body, it didn't hurt her in the slightest. The powerful impact made him unable to stand firm. This guy is really not as simple as it seems. The Yellow Emperor Sword Soul Slash. This move infuses the powerful sword chi of the fruit's ability, and the sword chi swept across the body of another person will take away the person's soul by the way. Get on board now, it's too late to explain other things. Hailding and the others found it. Quickly take them on board and stay away from this place. Nina frowned and looked back at Gertz, who was searching for her companion. The power of this move is obvious to all, not only the 8 gods pirates, but even the members of the thieves have begun to move closer and stay away from Cake Island. Because of the destructive power contained in this move. It's just too powerful. At the same time, it was precisely because of this trick that they realized what kind of gap there was between themselves and the Emperor of the Sea. Don't worry, everyone will get on the boat and stay away from Cake Island. Gilles turned his head and looked at Fujitora, and he was very clear that after finding Shiryu of the Rain, they all boarded the ship, while the other little pirates, looking at the 3 generals who had been completely knocked down and the others, also returned to the ship. There is. After being turned into a toy, Owen assists the other pirates and brings his brothers and sisters to the mothership. Each of them is very clear about the consequences of one move. Because after the fruit ability is injected, amid the huge fluctuations of the soul fruit, once it is affected by the shock ability, the soul will definitely be taken away. Yagami Kanto is quite clear about this guy in front of him. For him, what kind of enemy he is, he also knows very well what the consequences will be when this move hits him. You must avoid it as much as possible, otherwise you will definitely suffer. But if this is Charlotte Lingling's trick, then the real powerful move must be waiting for her in the back. Right now, his mind was spinning rapidly, thinking about how to avoid this trick. Unfortunately, there is no other way. Yagami Kangdu was helpless. Have a good time with him. Susano. The sword energy hit. At this moment, Susano, formed by the combination of Amaterasu and Tsukiyomi, completely surrounded Yagami Sudo's body in an instant. Crimson Skeleton completely blocked this move. After this move, the smoke and dust were everywhere, and the surrounding strong tremors and fluctuations caused that there was really no place to settle in these 4 places. At this moment, the top of the Cake Island has also been shattered by him, and what remains here is just a flat surface. The mountains collapsed and the earth cracked, and at this moment, the huge explosion from the cake completely shattered the ground under their feet. Chapter 211. Strange Ability, Shocking Charlotte Lingling. At this moment, the 3 generals and other family members have been safely transferred to the mother number, but now, Charlotte Lingling can't control so much. Because he has already lost his mind, and now his only goal is kill the man in front of him. And the thing that worried them the most finally happened, that is, the king of this small island finally destroyed the island with his own hands. Of almost 10 kilometers. After the strong shaking, the huge waves completely beat them inside. Relying on his own ability, and he also spent a lot of effort, he finally managed to escape the huge waves and the powerful air waves. When they came back to their senses again, looking at the cake island in front of them no longer existed. But when Nina came back to her senses completely, she was completely dumbfounded when she looked forward. He couldn't believe the scene in front of him. All the people who didn't leave on the island were killed. The whole cake was completely flattened, and all kinds of debris just floated in the sea. And the bones of countless sea kings floating on the sea. The tremors of these few moves are enough to reflect how powerful the two people used to fight. There were only 2 people standing on the whole flat ground, but a huge scarlet colossus was found. The scarlet colossus was filled with intense light, and it even felt a little dazzling, but the inside of his light seemed to have a flame burning. Charlotte Lingling stared at the front with wide eyes, completely stunned. "Do you want to take my soul? Hee, I'm afraid it's impossible." He simply waved his hand, and Nasusano held the great sword in his hand and slashed at Charlotte Lingling. But Charlotte Lingling had no idea what kind of power he had, and dared to resist a sword alone. The vertical sword chi emanating from the vertical slash blocked by the horizontal line, as well as the chi waves severing the surrounding mountains, and even the sea king corpse floating on the sea, have been completely cut. And now, Charlotte Lingling's lower body has completely sunk into the ground. The huge deep pit he created completely surrounded himself, and now he is still struggling to resist. But now Yagami Kangdu deliberately retracted the sword. After Charlotte Lingling roared, the ground on the side was completely broken, and a huge deep pit was formed under her feet. He jumped out of the loud sound, and watched the air in the sky swept away by the huge airflow just now. What kind of ability is it? I'm still the first person with ability like you. He just sneered and didn't say what he was capable of. After all, no one knows the mystery of him. This is the power brought from another world. Therefore, for the people here, it can't just be described as a devil fruit. But with such power alone, it is enough to deal with the ant. My power is not something someone like you can guess. After Yagami Sudo finished speaking, Susano's power exploded again. Wait. Charlotte Lingling stopped her. Maybe she was too cowardly to take the next move. Why do you have any last words before you die? Despite saying this, Yagami Aoto is very clear. If I want to kill Charlotte Lingling, I am afraid that it will take a lot of effort, and it may not be successful. Because when he came to this world, his power was weakened a lot. I am afraid it is precisely because of the consequences left over after time and space. Therefore, even if he wanted to kill Charlotte Lingling, the Emperor of the Sea, it would be very difficult. Even if the move just now was avoided, I'm afraid I might not be able to block it if I want to carry it hard. Even though he is the strongest creature, my fruit ability has long been awakened. If you want to extract his soul, although it will be laborious, it will definitely not be unsuccessful. You stop me from this move. You want to take my life with just one trick of yours. Kaido used to be like you, but what about the consequences? Yagami Kanto sneered. With his immortal body, if it weren't for the restraint of the power of the world, it would be impossible for Auntie to have the ability to fight against him. Soul Fruit, to put it bluntly, is biased towards spiritual attacks. With the power of reincarnation, the Soul Fruit is completely restrained. Therefore, even without Susano, Charlotte Lingling's tricks would not be able to impact Yagami Soto. Could it be that you really have such power in you? I am afraid it is because of her overdigestion that Charlotte Lingling's appetite is getting stronger and stronger, but it is also because of the unsatisfied outbreak of the disease, and the reason why she continues to fight. She can get a little bit from her own outbreak of emotions. Sensible. All in all, it should be to gain combat experience. Where does all this nonsense come from? The only thing Yagami Kingdu wants to do now is defeat him quickly. After the era of Whitebeard ended, Fishman Island has remained empty. And at this moment, only Charlotte Lingling is the only one who is vying for territory with her. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 212, Bewitched, Shaken 2. Killing it will not only be your own Cake Island, but Fishman Island will also be yours. But because of this battle, the Cake Island has been completely flattened. It may take some time to recover, so he doesn't covet this island anymore. Boy, let you see the majesty of the Charlotte family. Quick, it's now. Approaching the Cake Island at full speed, absolutely can't let Mom fight alone. Even if we have the worst plan, we must rescue Mom. Sparrow frowned. Even though he is scarred, he is very conscious, and the only thing he can do now is to stop the loss as much as possible. Looking at the 3 generals behind him who couldn't afford to be seriously injured, the only thing he can do now is to ensure the safety of my mother as much as possible. Because such a long time has passed, he is also very clear that Charlotte Lingling's eating disorder has completely broken out. Like this, it is definitely not good for him. What's more, after the outbreak of symptoms, Charlotte Lingling's combat power will definitely increase, but it is her lifespan that is lost. If she can't get timely replenishment of her soul, it will not only be ruined for him. The Yellow Emperor's sword breaks 5, and the blade. Charlotte Lingling has completely vented the anger in her entire body. By swinging the great sword in his hand, he can easily burn the flames. And this huge flaming blade swung desperately towards Yagami Kingta in front of him, Susanoo who completely surrounded him. The fiery sharp blade slashed at Susanoo, as if he was also strongly shocked. This kind of chasing and beating can even cause slight cracks in Susanoo, who is not yet complete. Yagami Kanto was a little worried. If it was normal, he would not worry about such a problem at all. Because even if it is the strongest opponent in the past, it may not be able to hurt himself in the slightest. But now, after his own strength was weakened, it was completely different. In desperation, he had no choice but to strike now, just waving his hand, and the huge long sword crossed Charlotte Lingling's body, knocking it out completely. And Charlotte Lingling, although bloated, is quite light. With just one flip, it can land very smoothly. But as soon as he landed, by the deep pit under their feet almost completely shattered the flat land under their feet. Now he planned to continue the charge, but found a familiar figure emerging from the sea behind him, the Forgotten One floated out of the sea. Whoops! Prometheus, aren't you dead yet? Charlotte Lingling turned her head and looked at the sun floating in the sky with a hint of anger and contempt. And now, even with the humble thundercloud in the sky, Zeus felt a little uncomfortable, and even a little scared. So does Prometheus. Damn, you two are really stupid. Sure enough, I can't refer to you at any time. We're ferocious, and just one look made the two of them feel quite scared. Who was originally the absolute strength, never threatened him too much from the beginning to the end. Even if they fought each other, it was because of the incompatibility. Why don't you follow me? And just now, Yagami Soto raised his head and looked at Prometheus and Zeus floating in the sky. A smile on their faces, the two of them were surprised at first, and then contradicted a lot. Why is it that the two of you are planning to betray? I miss you, you two should be very aware of the outcome of the betrayal after being with me for so long. This sentence made them both bow their heads, afraid that they would not know what to do next. At this moment, Charlotte Lingling jumped up, clutching the big sword in her hand, and the powerful breath cut the entire flat ground into 2 pieces. The battle has only just begun. The tree world is born. Huge trees bulged on the ground, and because of the recoil generated by this move, Charlotte Lingling could not stand firm. Therefore, carrying a huge tree, almost the entire island, once again saw the green vitality. Quietly waving his hand, the restraints of those trees became tighter and tighter, making Charlotte Lingling unable to break free for a while, and at the same time, Zeus and Prometheus looked at each other. "Don't worry, it's not as scary as he said. As long as you follow me, Zeus, I can definitely make you eat the most delicious cloud in the world. At the same time Prometheus, I can make you burn all the things in the world, and the fire is quite beautiful." Charlotte Lingling was stunned. This guy is really a bit of a lower limit. Even digging up his subordinates in front of his own face, is there a little bit of morality? The two of them were finally shaken. Thundercloud Zeus put away the dark clouds in the sky, and the sun shrouded here again. Chapter 213. It's time, it's over. The blood mist was also completely blown away by the powerful airflow, and the old vitality was restored here. Now that Prometheus has also decided, it is best to follow Yagami Kanto. As simple as that, Yagami Kingdu added 2 more powerful bodyguards. Zeus Thundercloud, which can summon powerful thunder, and Prometheus, the hellfire that can burn everything. With the help of the 2 of them, this battle will definitely be stronger. But considering the need to stabilize the 2 of them, he did not plan to let the 2 of them participate in this battle. After all, Charlotte Lingling is also their former master. If you let them do it, I'm afraid they will be able to do it. Even if he is really able to do it, he may not be able to win the hearts of the people. Don't worry, I will protect the 2 of you, and I will never let you suffer. And you don't have to take part in this battle, it's between me and him. After hearing it, the 2 of them smiled and followed Yagami Kingta. They were completely convinced because of their domineering. "Is this a betrayal?" Charlotte Lingling said. At this moment, Charlotte Lingling, who was betrayed, was extremely angry. Boom, boom, boom. Charlotte Lingling was covered in blood, and she continuously threw her fists at Yagami Kingta. Yagami Kanto, with his speed surpassing Charlotte Lingling, flickered sideways in the crack. Body is like a piece of paper, continuously dodging several punches from Charlotte Lingling. Although these few punches were unsuccessful, the hammer hit the ground, but it still erupted with a mighty force that shook the ground, causing many survivors on Cake Island to stand unsteady. Continuous fighting. Yagami Kanto has confirmed Charlotte Lingling's eczema and has a high fighting instinct. When encountering danger, it will instinctively avoid it, and it will not reveal any flaws. Any attack with her speed and dangerous instinct. But in this form, there is also a big disadvantage. That is, the completely irrational shape itself will not have fatal flaws because of instinct, but it will not catch the opponent's flaws. That is to say, Yagami Kingta can use whatever he wants. There is no need to be afraid of any flaws in the casting process, and being caught by Charlotte Lingling. Losing one's sense is death. After avoiding Charlotte Lingling's punches in a row, Yagami Kingta folded his hands flat in front of him. Taking a step back, he retreated to dozens of meters away, and his eyes flashed with cold light. Om! The black and white killing of the ashes suddenly erupted in the palm of your hand. How terrifying was the killing of the ashes by the 8 gods Kangdu. Even if Kaido, the beast, went all out to face the bombardment, he was afraid that he would not escape death. And Charlotte Lingling's berserk form with overdrawn vitality, possessing the ability of soul and soul fruit, can barely resist the killing of ashes. Almost. At this moment, the ashes of the total slaughtered condensed on the palm of Yagami Kingdu. You die. Charlotte Lingling made a beast-like sound, and in the blood-filled and scarlet pupils, there was no rational existence, only madness. Ignoring what Yagami Kingdu was doing at all, he continued to rush towards Yagami Kingdu. Boom, boom. Charlotte Lingling threw her fists continuously, but was dodged by Yagami Kingta. What is Yagami Kanto doing? Of the Charlotte Lingling pirates who watched this scene from a distance, all showed a look of surprise. Before, Yagami Kingdu and Charlotte Lingling were facing each other, but now they suddenly changed their style and began to retreat and avoid. Because the distance is too far, no one dares to approach, and the battle area between Yagami Kingdu and Charlotte Lingling, because the energy is too violent, it is difficult for seeing and hearing to penetrate, and can only be observed with the naked eye. A glimmer of light flashed in Pelispero's eyes, and he murmured, "Is it a lack of physical strength, or are you planning to use this method to exhaust my mother?" "Maybe I'm out of strength," Owen said in a deep voice, his eyes flashing. "We have never seen Mom in this state before. It seems that you don't need to breathe at all. Be able to keep breaking out, that. Yagami Soto and Mom have already fought against each other dozens of times." "No." Seeing that Katakuri, who can predict the future, suddenly spoke in a low voice. "Other people's knowledge can't penetrate into that area, and he can still explore a little bit." Katakuri stared at the field, barely perceiving some chaotic things, and said in a low tone, "That guy, Yagami Kingdu, seems to be preparing something." "What to prepare?" Hearing Katakuri's words, the expressions of Pelispero and the others changed slightly. "Ho, ho." Charlotte Lingling made a strange ho-ho sound in her mouth, and continued to dash towards Yagami Kingta. But in the next instant, Yagami Kingdu raised his hand silently. Ripples in the void continued, and a black hole suddenly appeared. Very suddenly, the ashes of the total killing broke out. Who was about to rush in front of Yagami Kingta, suddenly rippled in the surrounding space. The next moment, the whole person appeared inexplicably hundreds of meters away, and appeared in front of the ashes. Chapter 214, A Generation of Emperors, Finally Fall. Ho, ho. Charlotte Lingling made a rapid and strange sound, as if there was a vague sign that she was about to wake up, but it was too late to do anything. The total killing of ashes broke through the domineering of the armed color, and stuck on Charlotte Lingling's body, causing him to begin to change. When everyone looked at the center, almost all had shocked expressions on their faces. Only see. Charlotte Lingling's huge body began to crack and annihilate. Without an attack, the four emperors with a perverted physique like a demon could disappear in an instant. But Charlotte Lingling's body, at this moment, is gradually becoming dilapidated. Soon, a gust of wind blew through, accelerating the collapse of Charlotte Lingling's body. Yagami Kingdu stood silently in the distance. He knew that the battle was over. "If you lose your mind, you are doomed." Yagami Kingdu stood up straight, his eyes calm, and he slowly opened his mouth. If it is a rational situation, Charlotte Lingling must be able to predict the crisis in advance. If he could cut off the part of his body that was touched by the killed ashes, he would not die at all. But Charlotte Lingling, who has lost her mind, will no longer consider these. Successfully kill the four emperors. Charlotte Lingling, reward 100 bait. The system synth sound of the nine tails sounded. For killing the four emperors is far greater than any previous enemy. And at the same time, the entire Cake Island, all the Hormies made from the soul fruit lost consciousness in an instant. Lost his life and returned to normal. Homies is of the pirate group are still in a daze and daze. It wasn't until now that the chess soldiers around him, homies, all closed their eyes and lost their vitality, and they finally gradually woke up. After waking up, what appeared on his face was unbelievable. Hormies has all disappeared, which means that the power of the soul fruit has been unlocked. This also means that Luot Lingling, the five emperors, was finally defeated. No, it won't be like this. Some people shook their heads and stepped back with unacceptable expressions. He seemed to be smiling, but he couldn't feel any smile. How could Mom lose the battle? It can't be true. Katakuri-sama, say it's not true. Katakuri's expression, as early as the moment when the white light covered the world, there was no longer any warmth, and there was only silence that had never been seen before. Of Yagami Kingdu and Charlotte Lingling, and the distance is too far, he cannot foresee the future there. But when Charlotte Lingling was pierced by a strange bone, he knew it was over. In the case of eating disorder, Charlotte Lingling, there is no reason at all, and she will not find a way to deal with it. He was so far away that it was too late even to think about it. Besides, Shiryu of the Rain, he couldn't get past it. Thief, It's over. Katakori's hand holding the weapon slowed down, and his eyelids finally drooped. Yagami Kangdo's strength itself is very strong, strong enough to suppress Charlotte Lingling. In the eyes of Katakori, Yagami Kangdo's combat experience and fighting methods were too rigorous to be rigorous. Impeccable fight. Under the circumstance that his own hard power is strong, the whole battle is still played in an orderly manner. Being able to keenly capture all the flaws of Charlotte Lingling, she also quickly found a way to deal with Charlotte Lingling, who lost her mind and ran wild. It is not wrong to lose this battle. Charlotte Lingling, is she dead? At the edge of the island, Morgans boarded a special aircraft. Pulled by countless seabirds, it flew in the air outside the Cake Island, watching the scene in the field from a distance. He slowly put down the telescope, and the shock in his eyes did not fade away for a long time. That is Charlotte Lingling, after the era of the great pirates, the emperor who ruled the New World for nearly 20 years. He thought that this battle might be won by the Eight Gods pirates, because he had already learned the style of the Eight Gods pirates. But I didn't expect that Charlotte Lingling would die here. The emperor has fallen. He can no longer imagine what kind of waves there will be on the sea tomorrow. To what extent will the whole world be impacted by this news? It's over. Fujitora looked at the field from a distance, and saw that Charlotte Lingling was no longer alive. He spoke in a low tone, and his heart was also ups and downs. It's faster than expected. Shiryu of the Rain drank a cigar, turned the blade of the second-generation Onido in his hand, and stabbed into the ground, concealing the fluctuations in his heart. No one can be calm. Even the people of the Eight Gods pirates, could not be calm. Charlotte Lingling was killed like this, since Charlotte Lingling is finished. After Shiryu of the Rain exhaled a puff of smoke, his eyes slowly moved to the pirate group gathered in the distance. A fierce light flashed in his eyes, and he grinned. We should also start killing people. Chapter 215, Fleeing, Katakori's Determination. As Shiryu of the Rain's voice fell, Hyrding and others gradually retracted their gazes and turned to look at the many pirates of the Charlotte Lingling pirates. Statham tilted his head and said, "Except Katakori and Bling are left alive, and none of the others are left." From Yagami Soto before the battle. Except Katakori and Bu Ling must stay alive. Other generals can try their best to stay alive, and it's okay if they can't. Because there are many times when you can't be merciful in battle, unless you are much stronger than the opponent. The captain has already settled the battle, and we can't hold back the captain too much. Rhodes smiled lightly, and the whole person suddenly turned into an afterimage, rushing towards the pirates. And at the moment of Gertz, Shiryu of the Rain and the others also moved in unison. Rushed towards the pirate group, and they were already crushed in terms of momentum. Seeing Shiryu of the Rain, Hyrding and the others rushing over, Katakori, whose eyes were low, flashed a faint light again in his eyes. He turned his head and looked at his side, those terrified brothers and sisters. His eyes regained a gleam, and he said solemnly, "Go. It's impossible to win, leave here." Katakori's voice made everyone in the pirate group who were panic, almost lost their will to fight, regain a little morale. Although he escaped from here, he didn't know where to find shelter. But you can't just die here, it's more meaningful to live than to die. Retreat. Pelospero also gritted his teeth and waved the candy cane in his hand, signaling everyone to retreat to the west coast, where there were their fleets and ships. The entire pirate group scattered in a hurry, all rushing desperately towards the west coast. Without the will to fight, some are left with only survival attacks. But no one escaped. When everyone turned and walked away, he stood there, staring deeply at Shiryu of Rain and the others who rushed over. Katakori. Pelospero, who was also about to leave, glanced at Katakori. Katakori did not look back, but said in a calm tone, "It is impossible for everyone to evacuate. People stay and hold them back. Take care of your younger brothers and sisters, Brother Pelos." Pelospero was silent for a second, then stepped out and paused for a while, but finally said dully, "I see." Leaving this sentence, he also withdrew with the crowd. At this time, someone also found the Katakuri left behind. "Brother Katakuri." "Why?" Bray and the others stopped, and even though they thought of the reason in an instant, there were still unacceptable expressions on their faces. "Come on. Don't let Katakuri die in vain." Pelisparrow gritted his teeth and yelled at Bree and the others. It was at this time that Shiryu of the Rain and the others swarmed over, instantly drowning the figure of Katakuri. Even though Katakuri is powerful and even has the ability to predict the future, in front of Shiryu of the Rain and other powerhouses who are not inferior to him, it is still impossible to compete with one another. Fujitori's gravity suppressed Katakuri. Shiryu of the Rain made it difficult for Katakuri to avoid it, and he kicked it upside down and flew out. Shiryu of the Rain followed one step at a time, and added a hot sword to cover Katakuri. "You go after the others." Towards Katakuri with a staff sword and spoke slowly. As for Fujitori's strength, Shiryu Rain and the others naturally have no doubts. Neither went to entangle with Katakuri, forcibly rushed over, and continued to chase the pirates. Kacha! Katakuri broke free from the flames. There was a trace of blood on the corner of his mouth, but there was a hint of determination on his face, and the power of the fruit's awakening was poured into the ground. Rice cake. The waves. Gulu gulu. With the awakening ability of the Nuo fruit, the earth with a radius of 100 meters suddenly turned into a squirming sticky rice cake. While entangling Shiryu of the Rain and others, it turned into a wave and swept down. Hyrding turned into an afterimage, and instantly pierced through the void and disappeared. Shiryu of the Rain raised his hand and slashed out with a sword, tearing apart the earth and burning the rice cakes to the ground. However, this move, after all, blocked the others except Helding. Fujitori's gravity knife tapped the ground, and a terrifying gravity instantly pressed on Katakuri's body, sinking his entire body. Katakuri is willing to stay and try to block them all alone. Fujitora appreciates this courage and determination, but this does not erase his sins. With a bounty of more than 1 billion, Katakuri has destroyed countless towns and killed countless people. It's human nature to stand up for my younger brother and sister, but I also have my position, and I won't let you go over it. Fujitora spoke slowly towards Katakuri. Katakuri looked at Fujitora and sighed in his heart, knowing that it was almost impossible for him to avoid Fujitora. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 216, Big Mom Pirates, Destroy. There's only so much I can do. In the bottom of my heart, I silently said something to Pelisparrow and the others, and then suddenly clenched a fist, condensed a huge rice cake fist, and smashed it towards Fujitora. Boom! Fujitora Hengsward swung and pressed, blocking the huge fist, and forcefully suppressed it there with gravity, making it difficult to swing and move forward. Even though Katakuri has the ability to predict the future, there is still a small gap between the strength of Fujitora. Even if he burst out desperately, he also made a near-death rampage, and at most even the gap, it was impossible to beat Fujitora. Helding was not blocked by Katakuri's rice cake waves, and the speed was the limit speed of the 8 Gates Dungia formation. After almost a few flashes, they caught up with the pirates. Day Tiger. The body of a huge giant, he raised his arms high and spread out, and let out a low roar. A huge white tiger with a diameter of several tens of meters was condensed and formed in the interweaving of the air waves, and then he was violently thrown to the many pirate groups of the pirate group. Perceiving the terrifying power of the Thunder Ball, many members of the pirate group were terrified and panicked. Hard cookies. In desperation, Cracker turned around and waved his arms. The biscuits gathered in the void and condensed into one side. Shield, with armed domineering attached to it, blocking Helding's blow. After blocking Helding's blow, Cracker tried to keep fleeing. But Helding flashed and rushed into the crowd. A terrifying air wave surged, shrouding more than 10 people in it in an instant. Elephant Evening. Under Helding's large-scale attack, 7 or 8 people were instantly defeated and fell to the ground. The rest of the people only reluctantly resisted by virtue of their armed domineering, and they were embarrassed. Damn! Seeing this, Kaligia could not help but grit his teeth, and suddenly slashed at Helding with his sword. Rolls, pretzels. On the domineering blade of jet black armed color, it suddenly spun and slammed through towards Helding. Crackling, the shock wave is intertwined with the blade, and it flashes and spreads in the void. Helding ignored the other pirates and got on the cradle. Punched out brazenly, and the tiger roared out again. Boom! With a roar and explosion, the cradle jumped out of the intertwined shock waves, trying to fight and retreat. But Helding's huge body was outrageously agile, and a flicker followed. Under Helding's onslaught, Cricket retreated again and again for a while. In front of the power of the 8 Gates Dungia formation, Kaligia has no possibility of escaping at all. Being completely entangled in place, he had to concentrate fully on dealing with Helding. At the same time, Shiryu of the Rain and the others also all arrived, chasing and killing everyone in the pirates, while the pirates fought and retreated. Just when the frontal offensive and defensive battle turned into a unilateral pursuit battle, and the war started to continue. Yagami Kangdu was suspended in midair, his arms crossed his chest, and he did not make any movement. Charlotte Lingling lost. She is the spiritual pillar of the entire pirate group. Without him, the rest of the pirates would not be able to exert much strength in a short period of time. However, after noticing that Fujitora was unable to take down Katakuri for a while, Yagami Sudo still shot. The divine power is activated, and the space ripples continuously. When he reappeared, Soto Yagami came to the battlefield where Fujitora and Katakuri fought. At this moment, Katakuri has been suppressed by Fujitora at an absolute disadvantage. Day Tiger. Yagami Kangdu's eyes were calm, and he threw a fist at Katakuri's head. Katakuri had already foreseen the attack of Yagami Soto, but there was a Fujitora in front of him, and he couldn't do anything to deal with it. Forced to growl, he burst out with all his strength to block Fujitora's blow, and at the same time turned his body sideways, trying to avoid it. But Yagami Kangdu's attack was not a single point, but the entire front. Boom! Katakuri's whole body was instantly bombarded into a sticky mass of rice cakes, which rolled backwards into the distance, blood spilling from the corners of his mouth. Fujitora raised his head slightly, did not give up this opportunity, immediately. A cane cut out. Ohm! The gravity knife suddenly erupted, and Katakuri couldn't avoid it, so he ate the knife. The whole person and the earth with a radius of tens of meters suddenly collapsed, and blood spurted out of his mouth. Seeing that Katakuri was seriously injured and Fujitora was already strong enough to restrain Katakuri, Yagami Kanto turned his head and looked at the other battlefields. After taking one step, he suddenly came to the back of the cradle. Cracker is entangled with Helding, resisting Helding's attack. He had already seen the scene where Yagami Soto attacked Katakuri and cooperated with Fujitora to hit Katakuri severely. When he noticed that Yagami Aoto disappeared again, he was already screaming badly. Whoosh! Yagami Kangdu kicked the back of Cracker with the violent wind and waves. Teeth, and at the same time resisted Helding head-on. He activated the biscuit fruit ability. On the back, conjured a biscuit and stimulated the domineering of the armed color to the limit. Chapter 217. Take over, the waters of the world. But under the foot of Yashin Kangdu, his domineering armament that inspired him to the limit was still unstoppable. The whole biscuit failed to stand still for half a second, and was kicked to pieces by Yagami Kangdu. After smashing the biscuits, Yagami Kangta hit the back of the cradle with one foot. Bang! Cricket flew out towards the front, and one end rammed into Helding. At the same time as blood spurted out of his mouth, he roared frantically and slashed towards Helding with a sword. Helding's face sank a little, and he did not back down, but roared violently, and went up against the Kelly frame. Boom! The shock wave exploded, spreading in all directions. Halding staggered and took a step back, but the cradle was restrained abruptly. The whole person fell to the ground, and the body was numb and stiff under the terrifying shock wave. Yagami Kangdo's sword pierced through the chest of Kelegia. Successfully kill the 3 generals Starcracker, reward 100 bait. After crossing the space several times in a row, severely injuring the Katakuri, and killing the Kelly frame, Yagami Kangdo felt that it was almost the same. He glanced at the battlefield where Shiryu of the Rain and the others and the pirates were already far away, and did not choose to pursue them again. Masters are basically destroyed, and if Shiryu of Rain and the others can't solve it, they can really commit suicide by hitting the tofu. If it is said that when the battle is defeated, the battle of Katakuri and the others is still in suspense. Then, Yagami Kangdo shot again, severely injuring Katakuri and beheading the Kelegia. With one of the 2 generals killed and one seriously injured, the battle is completely no longer suspenseful. 18 years of the era of the great pirates. The leader of the 5 emperor pirates, Charlotte Lingling, died in the battle between the pirates and the Yagami pirates. A few days later, the news spread all over the sea, setting off a huge wave that swept the whole world. After making countless people silent, their hearts are shocked. After rising from the 8 gods pirates, becoming the 5 emperors, and breaking the pattern of the 4 emperors, everyone knows that the new world will definitely fall into chaos, and there may even be emperors. Those fall. But no one would have thought that when the 5 emperors era lasted for less than 2 years, a fallen emperor appeared. The pirate group is declared shattered. New world. Back to the era of the 4 emperors again. Cake Island, which was as huge as a town, and the countless buildings on the island had all turned into ruins at this time, and the entire island had been destroyed. In the ruins, Jeers and others built a temporary camp. In the follow-up pursuit of the pirates, Chef Longbread was attacked by Halding and Shiryu of the Rain, beating to death, and the rest of the cadres also suffered heavy casualties. The Starcracker died on the battlefield, and Katakuri and Charlotte Breen were successfully captured alive. The remaining Generals Smoji and Generals Snagger were severely injured and finally escaped from the Cake Island, and their whereabouts are currently unknown. Did you escape? In the temporary camp, Yagami Sudo watched Shiryu of Rain and others who failed to chase after Smoji and Snag. Hands on his chin and spoke calmly. Of the Rain and the others showed a bit of shame on their faces. They should have been able to wipe out all of Smoji, Snag and others. However, due to the special sea area of the world, after reaching the sea, their ships were all stuck with candies made by Pelospero and could not pursue them. And during this period, a large number of reinforcements from other islands came to stop it. Although these little soldiers and pawns pose no threat at all, because they are at sea, the number is too large. After blocking for a while, he couldn't catch up with Smooch and others. Yagami Kangdo did not speak, and no one dared to speak. The Yagami Kangdo who will be killed head-on, no one dares to offend the current Jiwei. Doesn't matter if it's a joke at ordinary times, when it comes to important things, even Shiryu of the Rain will be cowardly. Forget it. In the silence, Yagami Kanto's voice finally broke the depression. He shook his head slightly and stood up. If you run away 2 stars, then let's run. They are all dead, and the remaining 2 generals can't make any big waves. Yagami Kangdo took a step forward and came to the top of the nearest relatively tall building wreckage. Looking down at the entire Cake Island, looking at the distant coast and sky, and said with a deep eye, "From today onwards, the waters of all countries are ours." Seeing that Yagami Kangdo no longer focused on the matter of running 2 generals, Shiryu of Rain and the others were all relieved. And at the same time with a sigh of relief, hearing Yagami Kangdo's words, everyone's mood surged again. The pirates standing at the top of the new world, why are they called emperors? Because they have their own territory, and they rule the sea like an emperor. All the islands and countries in that sea area belong to them. Now that they are killed in battle, the pirates have suffered more than half of their casualties, and it can be said that they have completely withdrawn from the stage of the new world. That once belonged to the pirates has completely changed hands and became their territory. From now on, it will be a veritable four emperors. Where Yagami Soto stood and spoke softly. There was no mistake in her words. From the moment of death, the 5 emperors changed back to the 4 emperors again. Philo reminds you. 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 218. Pleasure gives birth to sorrow. The means of the Golden Lion. Captain Yagami Soto, what to do with this cake island? Rhodes came to a ruin, looked around, and said to Yagami Kangdu. Cake Island is an island in the center of the Sea of Nations, and it was also the former base camp of the pirates. But now that it has been completely destroyed, if it is to be rebuilt, it will not be possible to do it in a short time. Rebuild it. Iori Kangdu thought for a moment, then calmly replied, but this is not the core territory, and the core territory will be placed in the sky in the future. Since there is a leader like Fujitora, there is no need to put the core area on the ground. Understood. Rhodes was slightly startled, then immediately. He understood, and a small smile appeared on his face. It's up to you, Shiryu, to take down the flag. Destroy all the remnants of the pirates, not a single one. Yagami Kangdu said to Shiryu of the Rain. There must be remnants of the pirate group on other islands in the waters of the world. 4. These, the remnants of the pirates, Yagami Soto does not intend to accept them, nor does he intend to let them go. There is no such thing as a prison here to hold him, so he simply executed them all. Of the executioner was just left to Yuzeliu to do. Understood. Shiryu of the Rain wiped the blade of the second-generation Kitaru, and grinned when he heard the words of Yagami Kanto. Killing pirates or something, this kind of thing is entrusted to him, and he is naturally satisfied. Yagami Kangdu glanced at Yuzeliu, and reminded in a calm tone, don't move innocent civilians, don't let me be an emperor with only territory and no people. Understood. Shiryu of the Rain closed his eyes slightly. Yagami Kangdu turned to look at Rhodes and said, we will take over all the territory of the pirates. After Shiryu of the Rain has cleaned it up, we will leave the comforting work to you. Although Rhodes is big, he can speak well. To do the work of cleaning up the remnants of the pirate group and appeasing the people, of course, there is no problem. By the 4 emperors, people living in the New World must do what they want to survive. Yagami Soto is not worried about disobedience or anything like that. The inspectors who have received them will be handed over to you, smile. Yagami Kanto turned his head to look at Fujitora and said, the pirate group is destroyed, maybe there will be some black forces and pirates who want to fish in troubled waters. If you dare to invade the waters of the 10,000 kingdoms, you know how to do it. The waters of the world have been ruled by the pirates for many years, and they have accumulated a lot of wealth under the burning, looting. Now that the pirate group has been destroyed, there are probably a lot of little pirates or underground forces who want to take the opportunity to go to the islands on the edge to make a few bucks. Whoever dares to do it, they must let them know that the 8 gods pirates cannot be provoked. Do your best. Fujitora nodded slowly while holding the cane sword. This task was exactly what he was willing to do. Equivalent to maintaining the security of the waters of all countries, which is a completely positive task. The tasks of repression and appeasement and maintenance have been assigned separately. During this process, Yagami Kangdu did not mention Shiryu of Rain, and left him aside. And at this moment, the sky suddenly became dark, and the air seemed to be a little dull. What is that? Statham, who was cleaning up the ruins, looked up at the sky with a stunned look on his face. He saw a huge black shadow, which was falling towards here. As the shadow got closer, its shape became extremely clear. It was a huge island similar to Cake Island. Hey, what are you doing? Did you do it? Shiryu of Rain's pupils shrank slightly and turned to look at Fujitora beside him. Fujitora raised his head and faced the sky, seeing the domineering sense of the huge falling island. His face was a little dignified, and he said, no, we are in trouble. Island fell. A terrifying oppression had already enveloped the entire Cake Island, causing Shiryu of Rain and others to show a bit of horror. An island fell from the sky. With their strength, even destroying something the size of a town like Cape Castle would take a lot of effort, not to mention destroying an island. This island with a terrifying fall is enough to crush everything on the Cake Island. Yagami Kingdo looked up at the sky. Looking at the island that was getting closer and closer, wrapped in huge wind pressure, making breathing heavy and stagnant, there was a cold gleam in the eyes. Even Fujitora couldn't make an island fall from the sky like this. Only one person who can do this, and that is Golden Lion Shiki. You are courting death, Golden Lion. In the cold eyes of the 8 gods Kangdo, there was no concealment of murderous intent. He once encountered the Golden Lion, and he had a bloody battle with the Golden Lion, which he still remembers. It's just that the Golden Lions are flying all over the sky and it is not easy to find, and I have never been able to find them. Unexpectedly, today, after defeating the pirates, the Golden Lion dropped an island right above the Cake Island. As the island got closer, a wild and immortal laughter broke out. Because the whole sky has been covered by the island, it is impossible to see where the Golden Lion is. Chapter 219, Anger, the Most Stupid Decision. Gia ha 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 ha. I didn't expect that you kid can really replace any of the 4 emperors. I'll give you a big gift today, take it well. If it was when Yagami Kingdo fought against the pirates, it was just destroyed. The Golden Lion came to make such a move, the consequences are undoubtedly unimaginable. Apart from Yagami Kingdo, it is impossible for anyone who has the spare strength to resist an island that has fallen from a height of 10,000 meters. Hearing the wild laughter of the Golden Lion, the killing intent on Yagami Kingdo's face slowly subsided, and his calm gaze was restored. Whoosh! Yagami Kingdo flickered and rushed to the bottom of the falling island. Reincarnation writing wheel opened, and the terrifying void turbulent rippling out. Super large entrance to different space. Open, this island was immediately absorbed. When the island enters the different dimension, it is naturally at the disposal of Yagami Kingdo. The violent fist fell, shattered in an instant, and fell into the billowing magma. After doing all this, Yagami Kingdo's complexion became even more unsightly. If the Golden Lions go to the Holy Land Marijoa every 3 to 5, or drop a few islands above the naval headquarters. Even if the experts from the Holy Land and the Navy headquarters are like clouds, they will be beaten to pieces. There is no one who cannot be killed by an island. If so, there are 2. There is no doubt that the horror of fluttering fruit lies in this. Golden Lion, Shike. Shiryu of the Rain had a sullen face, and he also remembered the name of the Golden Lion. When the Golden Lion escaped from prison, he had just arrived in the advanced city, and he was just a prison guard. Nina. Everyone should keep an eye on it, and if they find the trace of the Golden Lion, report it to me immediately. Yagami Aoto's tone was calm and heart palpitating. The Golden Lion was already on his must-kill list, and no one liked the situation where an island would fall from the top of his head from time to time. Fortunately, there is only one this time, not 2, and the trouble is big. Of defeating the pirate group disappeared completely with the one sent by the Golden Lion. That guy's brain has returned to normal, so it really becomes a hidden danger. The 8 gods Kingdo stood on the island where the Golden Lion came from, looking at the sky in the distance. From Yagami Kingdo's point of view, the Golden Lion simply had a problem with his brain, so he ran to toss with some mutant beast. The ability of the fluttering fruit itself is countless times more terrifying than any beast. A large island, with the current strength of Yashin Kingdo, can indeed be smashed abruptly. But others are different. One of the most perverted abilities in the One Piece world. Yagami Kingdo thought about it for a while, and finally sighed. A fluttering fruit does not seem to require the ability of the person to develop it. It is also very easy to float an island. This is really a perverted ability that can no longer be perverted. Put it bluntly, to give this kind of ability to someone with some brains is enough to toss the world government to collapse, not to mention the 4 emperors. It's no wonder that the world government has seized the Golden Lion twice, and both times were placed in advanced city for permanent detention. If such a devil fruit spreads out, the problem is too serious. Yagami Soto also felt the power of the world government for the first time. The era is constantly changing, the Rocks era, the Roger era, the Great Pirate era, the Four Emperors era. But the world government has always stood there, and has not been shaken for 800 years. Just imagine that there are countless perverted abilities in this world, and countless terrifying characters that can be created. Under such circumstances, the world government can stand upright, and its foundation is far from being comparable to any other force. Strength, power. Yagami Kangdu clenched his fists, feeling the lack of strength. Even though he has been able to destroy one of the four emperor pirates now, his strength is still seriously insufficient in the face of the world government. The next step is to enter a period of development. Half a month later, Nina took a stack of withered yellow reward orders and put them on the coffee table in front of Yagami Kangdu, and said, "This is a new reward order and a newspaper." Yagami Kangdu took the newspaper and glanced at it, and found that the picture of the island falling down was published in the newspaper. In addition, the horror of the golden lion who escaped from the advanced city was described in detail. So far, the advancing city known as the Iron Wall, only one person has successfully escaped from prison, and that is the Golden Lion. As for the conflict between Yagami Kangdu and Golden Lion, it is still a mystery to the world. No one knows why the Golden Lion appeared after Yagami Kangdu destroyed the pirates. But this news undoubtedly shook the world. Many people who have experienced the era of the Golden Lion, Roger, and Whitebeard are well aware of the horror of the Golden Lion. Even if Yagami Kangdu is now the emperor who reigns over the sea, he even killed the pirates. But the Golden Lion is a legend of the previous generation, and it is undoubtedly a huge threat. Philo reminds you, 3 things in reading: collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 220, Reorganization, Change the System. Not bad to brag. Yagami Kangdu casually scanned the contents of the newspaper. The Golden Lion was a good threat, but that was because of the uniqueness of the fluttering fruit. Its strength after losing both legs is no longer in the eyes of today's Yagami Kangdu. He is willing to take action. Killing a Golden Lion is not a matter of minutes, but sometimes, it is necessary to hide the strength of appropriateness. Otherwise, he is too invincible, and his subordinates will no longer have a sense of urgency for the strong. No way, let him, the captain, do everything by himself. After putting down the newspaper, Yagami Kanto picked up the stack of reward lists again. The first is his bounty, and the amount of the bounty has already reached as much as 2.5 billion. Bounty such a thing, to a star level, is actually not meaningful. Even if an admiral makes a move, he may not be able to kill a general. Especially at the level of Katakuri, even if he can't beat him, he can still escape if he wants to. But the bounty represents an assessment of the threat level by the world government. Today's Yagami Kangdu's threat level is obviously higher than before. Fujitora's bounty also appeared. With Morgan's photo depiction and reports, Fujitora's power undoubtedly shocked the world government. I didn't expect that such a powerful fighting force would be put under the command of the 8 Gods Pirates. And Fujitora's bounty was tentatively set at 1 billion Baileys. 1 billion reward is too low. Yagami Soto glanced at Fujitora's reward list and put it aside. Shiryu of the Rain's bounty has reached 1.6 billion Baileys, slightly increased. This bounty is almost fixed, and it is almost impossible to raise it again. As a result, the strength of Shiryu of the Rain cannot reach the level of the 4 emperors. Second, Shiryu of the Rain is a subordinate of Yagami Kangdu, and the threat level exists and is calculated by relying on Yagami Kangdu. Helding also has a bounty of 1 billion Baileys. With Helding's current strength, he is indeed worthy of a bounty of 1 billion Baileys. Well, you're worth 300 million Baileys. Yagami Kangdu flipped 2 more, flipping Nina's bounty. Finding that Nina's reward had reached the level of 300 million Bailey, she couldn't help but chuckle at her. Nina sat on the sofa and continued to drink unmoved. of the 8 gods' pirates is enough to make countless people tremble. After turning over all the reward lists, Yagami Kingdu put the stack of reward lists on the table. Back, leaning on the soft white cloud sofa, he said to himself, "It's time to disband the 8 gods' pirates." Disband. Nina tilted her head to look at Yagami Kingdu, a hint of surprise flashed in her eyes. Yagami Kingdu nodded and said to her, "It's not a literal dissolution. Do you think the current Yagami pirates can be divided into combatants, doctors, and sailors? Today's 8 gods pirates have taken over the waters of all countries and have direct subordinates, forming a huge force. In this case, combined in a single ship with the structure of combatants, doctors, and navigators, but will be divided into a huge fleet." Nina sees through at one point, immediately. "I understand what Yagami Soto means." She nodded lightly. The current Iori pirates should indeed undergo a reorganization. "How are you going to regroup?" Yagami Kingdu smiled slightly, and he already had a plan in his heart. A few days later, the Iori pirates held a high-level meeting, and the meeting completed the dissolution and reorganization of the Iori pirates. After the reorganization, the 8 gods pirates have a completely different system than before. First squad, Captain Fujitora smiled and has the power to control other squads. The 22nd Division Criminal Army, Captain Yuziliu, responsible for clearing criminals and intruders. 3rd Division Medical Unit, Captain Gels, responsible for the medical work of the Yagami pirates. 4th Division Giant Force, Captain Helding, responsible for conquering the islands and seas that do not obey the rule of the nations. 5th Division Intelligence Unit, Captain Nicole Nina, responsible for direct contact with Yagami Kanto. Report relevant information to Yagami Kingdu, and convey Yagami Kingdu's orders, and manage information at the same time. Special Forces of the 6th Division, Captain Rhodes, responsible for various special tasks and secret tasks, as well as special cadres such as the protection of sugar. World Government. In the lobby on the highest floor, Wu Laoxing listened to the reports of his subordinates, with a slightly solemn expression on several pieces of information that had been infiltrated and eroded by the Revolutionary Army, and said, "The threat of the Revolutionary Army is getting more and more serious. With the passage of time, the Revolutionary Army is no longer as weak as it used to be. Rather, it penetrates into many countries, and the most important thing is that the ideas it spreads are extremely harmful to the world government. However, been able to find the figure of the dragon, and they are still at a loss as to where the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army is, and there is no way they can take the Revolutionary Army.